why let the bastards laugh all the way to the bank? You know, we may as well get together and try to create models of sustainability, tools for sustainability, and give it a try. I mean, what's not being tried is radical conservation and lifestyle change in a significant amount by the collective.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment.
Have a global warming day, Janaya. Have a global warming day. Have a global warming day. Masu masatsui ne. Watch the forest burn away. Masu masatsui ne. Watch the ice caps melt away. Have a global warming day. Have a global warming day. Watch the asphalt melt away. Catch a wave in Prudhoe Bay. Masu masatsui ne. Have a global warming day.
Have a global warming day. I'm with Jan Lundberg. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Watch the ice caps melt away. Watch the asphalt melt away. Well, here we are. You've been paying attention to this for a while, quite a while. Both global warming and peak oil and a lot of other things.
Well, that song is from 1997 when I attended the Kyoto meeting of the United Nations. And things did not look all that serious then. They look a lot more serious now. The bad news keeps coming in.
And faster and faster.
And we keep turning the ignition to melt another glacier. Doesn't change. But some things are changing, and that's why we're here, I guess.
Well, in part, we're hoping that people are changing. And certainly, you know, somebody like yourself, you were involved with the petroleum industry, right? But you've been involved with other things as well. I mean, so I'm here to look at what your big picture, kind of what kind of myths do we need to bust? Because more people are starting to get on the radar with peak oil. Certainly with climate change and Gore's movie and Inconvenient Truths getting more on the radar. But you know, where do you think we need to go, or what do you think is going to happen? How about big questions like that?
What's going to happen? Like, are we going to survive massive climate distortion? That's a big question. That seems to be the biggest question, more than, you know, when is peak going to really throw a monkey wrench into the global corporate economy? But they're sort of in a race.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
Which one's going to hit first? They're both hitting.
In a sense, I mean, you know, global peak, it's going to hit the economy. You're right. Big time. Food, transport, everything else. But global climate change is affecting everybody everywhere, although in different ways. The gift would be if the oil peaked out and we're not contributing, right?
Right, but we're going to have Petrocollapse, which will present us with a vastly inferior ecosystem to work with, to subsist on. And so climate change is a threat to that, even though Petrocollapse has its benefits, such as a cultural change will have to come out of no longer being able to be isolated consumers relying on distant world trade. We're going to have to get together as communities, as neighbors, as families, much more so. But then whatever the carrying capacity would be without fossil fuels, we also have to add in the factor of the deteriorated ecosystem.
So wait, I'm going to clarify this. I want to go back to one thing. Petrocollapse, that's your word. What do you mean by petrocollapse? Because most of us think of collapse as collapse. Collapse can also be, downsizing, downgrading. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't have a script.
Or what do you picture?
But it seems clear that the growth economy can no longer go forever. There are many contradictions with the financial system, with our dependence on dwindling resources, and too many people drawing upon these resources. Yeah. So we're strung out on petroleum. The days of cheap oil are over with.
Yes,
and
certainly.
What happens when enough of a shortfall of product kicks in to be felt by the oil market, and we have skyrocketing prices and hoarding and people not getting to their jobs, the trucks not coming into Safeway or Walmart. What happens then? Is that an irrelevant question because we don't want to go there, we don't want to picture it? Well, if we're really going to come up with solutions, we better picture the worst
scenarios. Yes.
And deal with possibilities. I say Petrocollapse is a possibility in the near future. I believe climate change is running a fast race to hit even faster. But whatever the collapse may be, we have to realize it's all one. The eco in ecology and eco in economics. We could have some kind of a financial meltdown or some geopolitical event somewhere, and nobody would say it's because of peak oil or because we're, consumers pigging out, as Roscoe Bartlett says Americans have been doing.
Good for him. He also warns. The representative. Wow.
Well, he goes further than that. He also warns that to try to bridge the gap and come up with various kinds of alternative fuels, whether it's heavier oils or coal, whatever can be done in that regard to keep the system going. He says that is intending to keep pigging out.
So he's really naming it because that's
he knows we have to change. So, you can't wait and say, well, if we just change our light bulbs and drive cleaner cars, we're going to have much cleaner and stronger economy. He doesn't play that game. He's not being funded to say that. He's not trying to please people who have illusions about technology. He tells it like it is.
So what he's saying is it's delusional for us to think that we can just go swap out our petroleum with A, B, C, D, biodiesel or ethanol or hydrogen or one of the other things.
Well, these things exist, and it's worthwhile to look into them and see which ones have local applicability. But to say that the consumer economy is going to continue with either your dirty alternatives or renewable alternatives, that's not in the cards. And that's what the Hirsch report told the DOE.
Well, your consumer economy, based on this capitalistic economy, is about growth forever, right? It has to keep growing to keep the economy going, to keep, which means using more and more resources, which the only thing that grows forever until it kills its host is a cancer.
Well, I feel like greater San Francisco, greater Los Angeles, many cities around the world are like cancers taking over more and more green space. Well, and so we devised the Alliance for a Paving Moratorium years ago for the nonprofit group I started. We published the Auto Free Times magazine. And we even did some depaving to try to
To
get some gardening space where we didn't need a driveway or a parking lot. It's been done successfully in Berkeley and some in Arcata and here and there. But we're not ready yet. If we have a kind of emergency, like in World War II, where victory gardens involved depaving and getting rid of lawns and growing food, if we were to get there with some leadership or people having a sense of urgency, which they, for some reason, don't quite have.
I think that's an interesting part of this, is that people don't have, well, I think part of a sense of urgency or part of a sense of we are all in this together. I think there are people who are already starting in these directions and doing the community gardens and other things. But there's not a collective will, it doesn't seem. And I don't, is it because, you know, I want to keep that American right to consume? Have we gotten soft? You know, have we gotten accustomed to this?
Well, we have a lot of plastics in our body, softeners in plastics, bisphenol A, very dangerous substances. Perhaps
maybe there's a chemical.
Well, the species is getting a little weaker, and nature has its way of, you know, culling and overpopulation. And maybe people are a little weaker in the head these days too, because in the 1960s they got riled up, and the student population say, what kind of a world are our parents trying to hand us? Shall we change our world? Well, okay, I guess I'll go to university and learn and change the world. It's not the same today. They're going to university basically to make money.
Yes.
And they're more plasticized in terms of their bodies. And they've had to accept a lot of things that were being questioned strongly. And now the questions are even more urgent, because all those decades where we didn't follow the environmental movement's
sure.
you know, best
their advice
inclinations,
to us, sure.
or Jimmy Carter's
right.
tendency to conserve fuel. These things have not been done. That's why we're faced with a tsunami, as Congressman Bartlett calls it.
Tsunami, a tidal wave.
Yes,
right?
That's what peak oil is to some.
Interesting to picture it that way.
So you can call it anything you like. Petrocollapse, tsunami. You can call it just peak oil. You can call it energy descent. There's no reason to quibble about exactly when
sure.
or how long a process may take, but we try to be honest about the negative aspects of it, to let people know that it may not be pretty, there may be violence and a lot of upheaval.
A lot of disruption.
But
yes.
also the positive aspects of working together to grow the food locally. We won't have any choice. There's not going to be ways of being isolated about this anymore.
Well, I have a question for you on that regard. So, you know, the programs we're doing are focusing on what people can do locally, a little bit of renewable energy, food production, and so on. I find myself thinking about the earth being, how do I say, the survival of the wealthiest here. The people that have wealth, who are running corporations, who are living well, which is a lot of us in the United States, or a lot of people who are controlling the money in the world.
Pretty small number, really.
Small number, but a lot of control, a lot of power, a lot of economic power at least, could easily say, look, I'm going to choose to keep putting fuel in my vehicles or our fleet, and whatever that takes.
Here's why I don't believe it'll work that way.
Good, I want to hear.
Well, the oil market and the whole oil industry is set up for maximum producing and maximum consumption. They want to see a growing pie. They really don't want to compete and see prices of oil really high with a small amount of product. They've been trying to get the product out there and grow in wealth and power. So when we have the possibility of true competition, or a smaller and smaller oil industry to pump out less product, lower utilization of capacity of refineries,
right.
Declining production. The oil industry and the economy are not set up for this. They're only set up for growth. So it's not really reasonable to expect an oil industry to be putting out 85% of what it was doing and then scaling it down in an orderly fashion where we're then getting 70% and 60%. This is an assumption that the oil age will start to decline gently, or that we will adapt to no more growth, and that there will still be industry and wealth, and that people will be able to fill up if they have the money, if they have a functioning car. It may not work that way because of the chaos of a crumbling infrastructure. The infrastructure is all based on cheap petroleum. Without that being maintained, it's not like you can have a small subset of people continuing to enjoy a whole petroleum infrastructure. They will find themselves without the fuel too. Industry may have been shut down. We may see oil and coal even kept in the ground. We may be so busy trying to eke out our existence with a degraded ecosystem that we will leave the past behind. Technologically, in many ways, things that required massive consumption, and we may be reinventing society. There may be the tribal imperative, because after all, if there's a die-off, and when there's a die-off, shall we say, and if it's thorough enough that there's plenty of land and empty houses, why would people go be a wage slave or be a serf somewhere when there's open land and people are getting together voluntarily to say, we've got to get food out of the ground, who has skills to do what, let's pool our knowledge and resources and labor and make this work. We're going to defend ourselves, we're going to be a tribe, and we're going to be doing some trading. There might be some minimal trade with sail power, perhaps. Sailboats, horses, maybe rail will exist somewhere, but we still haven't seen renewable powered rail transportation yet. So when is this supposed to happen?
Well, your picture that you just painted is a fairly precipitous collapse in the economy and in supply.
In the human time scale, I believe it will be. Who's to say? Somebody else was giving a presentation recently on this. They didn't know if it would be 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. That's really not the point. In our lifetimes, we're going to see something really major. And when we look at how tight the oil market is right now, you know, demand has gotten way out of hand. That's the main problem. So when industry is straining to accommodate it, and we have production falling off in key major fields, and many countries have passed their peak, and we're not making the discoveries to replace what we're using, it doesn't look good for this kind of continuity. And my oil marketing background tells me that we could see something like, as we predicted in 1979 with the second oil shock, a 9% shortfall triggered a return to the days and lines and hoses that we saw in the oil embargo in 1973 and 74.
Right. So when you think about, you know, what people, how do we even get from here to another place? What do you find yourself telling people to do or not do?
Well, as change takes hold of our lives, we're going to be groping for solutions and for togetherness, solidarity. People may or may not understand fully what's going on, depending how close they've been paying attention. If they've been watching the corporate news media and watching, you know, Hollywood entertainment and not reading between the lines, or if they don't look at the right things on the internet, people are going to be caught flat-footed. And their food is coming on average 1,500 miles in this country or from outside of this country. Conserving energy has not yet begun. It will not be possible to really make a major dent in this and solve it through the kind of conservation known as efficiency. It's going to be more a matter of curtailment.
Which is, of course, one of those hard words for us to hear.
Pulling the plug, not using the energy. If it's not there, you're not using it. Or if you pretend it's not there, and you're cutting way back voluntarily, that's also curtailment.
Right, that's true. That's true. And so counter to the whole trajectory we're on. I want to go back to your talking about pavements and so on, because we were talking earlier before the show here about rooftops, rooftop resources, and the work you've done with depaving. I mean, part of what I expect we're going to have to do is we're going to need that land to be growing food much more intensively than.
And we've paved over so much of it. Farmland has been lost at such a terrible rate. So will agribusiness take care of such huge populations as we have now, based on petroleum chemicals and fuels?
So we've got steroids, and we've got
distribution.
agriculture on steroids, if you will, right?
It's very short-lived.
Of course.
And now people want to grow fuels
Right.
with these
Right.
dwindling resources, which probably would involve GMO crops, monocropping, pesticide levels
Right.
even higher, because really genetically modified organisms are an excuse to use more petrochemicals. Because if the certain kind of corn or soybean is Roundup ready,
Yes.
that means it can tolerate a massive amount of these poisons on it to kill everything else. So you're, ultimately eating something that wasn't killed off by all this poison. And this is good business for Monsanto. They're not a seed company trying to take your seeds away so much as they are trying to sell more product. So they come up with this, hey, you've got to buy more of our product because these special seeds we sold you allow you to kill everything. What a happy thing, just kill everything but one species. Well, this is what Daniel Quinn called totalitarian agriculture. It started up 10,000 years ago, and we're still doing it, except we've perfected it, and it's coming back in our face.
You brought up, here in our last event, you brought up about the race between petrocollapse and global warming effects, and the fact that that the future is inheriting a much diminished ecosystem because of that kind of pesticide life and
other things we've done, depleted uranium strewn about, all the paving, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it feels to me that that task is daunting. It would seem to me of how to turn the tide of a very huge barge, a Titanic, going in a direction of increasing corporatization and pollution and resource use and so on. Turning that tide, that's a big, I mean, the planet may do it for us, even though we're being invited to do it ourselves.
Well, there are eco-villages out there. There are communities. People have been doing back to the land and sustainable living in various forms, and you're an expert on this.
Well, I've visited some, but I feel like they're just nibbling at the edges. They're small effort. They're important in small efforts. But I look at a city like San Francisco where we are, and it's like there are so many people consuming so much stuff with so little space to grow their food or do their energy.
True. There have been some gardening projects lately to help people get ready for the effects of peak oil, and I'm surprised that the very tiny size of these gardens. I mean, you might get a little salad greens perhaps out of it, considering the weather here as well. But rooftop gardens is something that you'd also have to have energy, probably, to pump the water up to the rooftops. But will the water be flowing down below in the pipes?
Because
will it?
I understand. No, it will depend.
Right.
Sometimes and some not, because that's using electricity.
Where's our water coming from? It depends what city we're in.
That's true.
We need to be aware of all these things. And that's why it's fortunate that San Francisco has its peak oil resolution, and they want to deal with the challenges of peak oil.
I think that's heartening, and I think that we visited Portland, who are doing the same thing. I mean, that's moving in the right direction. Would Roscoe Bartlett have us do? Actually, I know what I would do. I'm going to shift gears. Would you sing us the song from the DePavers in our last 3 minutes here?
Well, sure. got a letter from our old schoolmaster. Didn't think he had a lot to say. Said he'd seen the future in a big dream, and nothing that he knew was the same. Yeah, master, he said, driving cars and eluding much faster, the ways of nature and community. So we broke up all the asphalt for master. He gave us all some herbal muffins and tea. Free is we now. This is where the mandolin's supposed to come in. Please, improvise away. Quit our jobs, working for the new masters, the phony flag wavers who stole the land. Corporate systems for pollution and profit come apart at the seams. What a great depression.
You know, the least we can say is it's going to be an adventure, and there's a lot of changes ahead.
I agree entirely.
So may we do it with the best spirit and the best support for one another that we can.
That's what it's going to take. More than some new find of oil or technological breakthrough, we have to depend on each other.
Thanks for being one of those voices that's harbinger of a different time.
Thank you for your kind words.
So, you're watching Peak Moment, community responses for a changing energy future. My guest is Jan Lundberg with culturechange.org. I'm Janaea Donaldson. Join us next time.